Hi, everyone. My name is Yiping, and I'm from IOSG. I focus on the infrastructure investment, and we have several cool co-founders here and discuss about the SVM today. We have Chris from Sonic, we have Jason from Solayer, and also Joanna from Shou. Maybe we can start with some introduction. You guys can give a little bit about your personal background.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Zhu. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sonic SVM. Sonic is one of the first SVMs along with our good friends here. We are dedicated to providing an individual liquidity layer for Solana, focused on attention capital markets, which is entertainment, games, and such and so forth. My personal background was at TikTok and ByteDance previous to Web3. That's also how we were able to bring around 2 million users into Solana through a TikTok Web3 app layer. And currently just went on mainnet and launching our mainnet hackathon as well. So thanks for having me.
Jason here, I'm the co-founder for Solayer. We're a hardware-accelerated SVM cluster to transparently scale Solana. So probably on day one, we're able to deliver about 1 million transactions per second for SVM transactions. It has a very different topology when it comes to network design, has a different sort of a consensus design as well, but we do keep the SVM compatibility of it. So my personal background, before this, I co-founded MPC Vault, which is a B2B business wallet that's quite widely used. We're transacting about $8 to $10 billion on chain DeFi movements every single week. And before that, my experience was mostly in AI training. How do you accelerate distributed cluster training for language models, from which we derived a lot of insights and basic experiences that also which we applied to building Infinity SVM. Before that, I was in applied cryptography research.
Hey guys, my name is Joanna, and I am the co-founder of Shou. So what is Shou, right? Shou is a roll-up stack that allows folks to bring Solana level experience everywhere. So as a developer, you can just develop once and then deploy everywhere. So we have in terms of development stage, we have a mainnet that's live currently that has been live since the beginning of the year. And we have about 40 applications already live on the mainnet. About half of them are native to Shou. A lot of the applications are focusing on AI and consumer, crossroad of those. And we also have a roll-up stack, as mentioned, kind of the first and foremost our bread and butter product that is currently being used by our chain partners to spin up their own app chains. My personal background is I previously worked at Coinbase as an institutional BD person working with a lot of protocols on the listing matters, and moved over to launch an NFT marketplace at Coinbase. And afterwards, I worked at Infra for my, I guess, crypto career. Also worked on the OP stack previously.
Yeah, thanks for the concrete introduction. I think people nowadays are complaining about infrastructure looks so similar with each other. And we have 3 infrastructure about SVM today. Do you guys want to show something? Let's maybe talk about one concrete use case.
Yeah, I do also agree that there's a lot of similarities in different infrastructures, and I think the configurability and use cases really matter the most. So for us, we started as gaming chain and kind of expanded out to TikTok, social media legacy products. And the use cases really centered around how do we actually increase margin for our users. So for example, we talk about this, but when we first started Sonic SVM, the original reason was because we observed that on Solana mainnet, Star Alice individual game, by putting a lot of their transactions on chain, they were driving around 20% of the entire mainnet's transaction hashes, driving a couple thousand wallets. But because of the number of transactions being on chain, they were actually starting to congest that part of the mainnet transactions already. And this is before the meme coin craze that happened in 2024, so quite early. But when we saw that, we realized that as Solana's price increased, rent costs and gas costs also increased for these users. So their margin let's say that it was 50% per day if they were just mining with their ships, actually decreased by 50% to 25% per day. And that was a significant downturn for a lot of the activities for these individual apps, even though we have local fee markets, which doesn't give them a higher gas, even if meme coins are being really popular. These users are also suffering from just the general cost of the chain rising. And it's never a matter of like performance of not being able to execute the transactions. It's oftentimes just the initialization of accounts, the actual rent cost increasing as a downstream effect for these users. So when we designed the chain, we focus on mass scale applications like TikTok mini apps, and we really wanted to decrease gas, decrease rent, and we've projected that Solana price is just going to increase, and that's what we did.
Yeah, before jumping to Jason, I think like you are talking more about like higher performance, lower fees, and we target more on the gaming use case. Anything specific you offer for the gaming use case?
So we have a framework called Rush, which gets rid of the necessity of initializing accounts on Solana, which is the most annoying part of any Solana developer. So when we got a lot of the EVM, I guess, devs to switch over to SVM, that was one of the, I guess, easier use cases. But I also think for developers, the need to transfer to a new ecosystem is also often focused on distribution as opposed to tech infrastructure. Like you said, a good dev, they don't need better dev experience. They need distribution, their app scene, and a good dev can figure out whatever they want.
Yeah, anything you want to share, Jason?
Yeah, I can just add to that from our perspective why we're doing Solayer. So we actually started with restaking. So restaking in the shared security manner, which is what Eigen did with their approach. But we wanted to take a more of an organic approach where we are generating real yield for users. So we did a lot of validator optimizations. At the highest, our APY for Shou, native Shou return, excluding all the airdrops, all these other fancy stuff, it's about 19% during the Trump trade. So while we're doing the validator experimentations and modifying the code, doing the optimizations, we noticed that there are significant more of an improvement that we can do, but we have to remove some of the protocol and consensus restrictions. It's a large surgery, right? Not small enough to fit into a SIMD, which is Solana Protocol Improvement Protocol. So that's something we noticed. And also, and with those changes, we're able to push it to 1 million transactions per second. So we are seeing this magnitudes of improvement. Ethereum are doing about 60, 70 transactions per second. Monad is at 10,000, right? That's advertised, but still EVM based. Solana, the highest, the peak. If you just look back of all the transactions that ever happened on Solana, the peak was about 7.4K. transactions, right? How can we push it to hundreds of times more than what we are seeing in the past? And with every mega jump in terms of scalability and reduced latency, you will see new applications thriving. And the good examples of EVM, which is with its incumbent liquidity of USDC and all these other tokens and etc., were not able to capture the meme trade. Even though people tried on Ethereum, like there are replicas of Pump.Fun, there are replicas of all these kind of trading bots on Ethereum, but they were not able to capture it just because people don't really like the user experience on EVM. So you see the liquidity flow because of a superior UI and UX. So that's something we fundamentally believe in, and also higher throughput, the benefits of higher throughput being transformed into a better user experience that's a much more stickier and in terms of both acquisition and retention of the users. And another thing is, so that would unlock a lot more use cases, right? And another thing that we noticed, if you're asking us where the immediate go-to-market or product-market fit is that during the Trump trade, lots of transactions were dropped. So Solana does have the issue of congestion. It just does not manifest itself in the form of high fees, like 60, 80 bucks you have to pay for per Ethereum transaction you have to make, but it manifests itself in terms of dropped transactions. So when you send a transaction, it doesn't get confirmed. It just like keeps spinning circle. And after 1 minute, transaction expired. That's all you see, right? So that's not a good of a user experience. So what we're thinking is also a thing called real-time blockchain. What that means is that with Solayer and Infinity SVM, you kind of get the Arbitrum experience. If you guys ever transacted on Arbitrum, you're sending the transaction, you know if it's going to fail or if it's going to be successful. So the second you click on that button, it succeeds, right? So that's the type of user experience that many of the Web2 developers want, and that's the type of user experience that people will be attracted to if you were to create an app or whatever. So that's something that we're working very hard towards, or we're trying to make sure that you can get this response even within the same API call when you send the transaction in. So that's very much like Web2. We're trying to make this asynchronous polling design back to the synchronous design, so that simplifies developer user experience at the same time. Yeah.
Joanna, I think Jason and Chris talks a lot about the features and they share lots of use case. Can you only share one use case, one key use case you want to mention?
Yeah, definitely. I think the main thing that really kind of differentiates us on the use case side is, we're actually a roll-up stack, right? So basically, we're very bullish on the app chain narrative, and you see all the success stories, right, on how Solana was able to get these user adoption. So what our stack enables is launch your own Solana, right? So launch your own Solana level experience onto your choice of L1 with your choice of DA, right? So the use case here is a lot of these AI chains, right? They want to, obviously take advantage of the lower latency feature that we have. Solana is a 400 milliseconds that's hard coded in the validator, like proof of history consensus, versus in our case, we strip out the consensus layer from the user execution layer using decoupled SVM, so we were able to lower the latency down to 50 milliseconds. So yeah, all of these performance improvement can allow the, finally getting inference model like LM training putting on chain, and these type of AI chains that wanted to use this very customized approach, perhaps use their own gas token, right? Perhaps building even further improvement on the TPS, like we now can enable that.
Yeah, great. Are you guys bullish on the infrastructure again? No. Okay.
I can share a little bit of why we're trying to touch many use cases, or I wasn't able to narrow down to a specific use case as opposed to maybe Chris is more trying to go into the gaming, is because we're trying to solve this generalized compute throughput and reduced latency problem. And I think that's, as infrastructure engineers, that's what we are very much interested in. So that's the reason why.
Yeah. Yeah, I think three of you guys also are the fundamental innovation in the Solana ecosystem. Maybe you can share a little bit around your personal story with SVM, how you get started with SVM.
Yeah, I can start there. We've been grinding the Solana trenches for 3.5 years. So one of our co-leads who blew up during the 2022 era introduced us to the Solana Foundation, and we got into Solana, dropped in the middle of the ecosystem. We call it chewing glass back then, right? Ethereum had a lot of really good developer experience in 2022, but Solana, we had to chew glass. And when we got dropped in the ecosystem, we were trying to just grab onto anything after FTX blew up in 2022. We tried to build actually MPC wallets, embedded marketplaces. We built our own games. We built NFT assets for other teams. We launched a bunch of assets. And what we realized is that, even to this day, Solana has this core ethos of quickly iterate upon a rocket ship that is not entirely complete. But during that mix, we saw a lot of asset being launched within the gaming ecosystem. And in Ethereum, you actually have the chains like Immutable X, Ronin, Beam X, and I can probably name another 5 or so, that is basically just working on specific use cases regarding gaming assets. In 2020, you have DeFi plus gaming. 2021, you have NFT plus gaming. 2022, 23, a bear market. 23 and 24, you have meme coin plus gaming. So games are amazing hosts for all kinds of assets, but they also require really high performance. And that's when we saw Star Alice, which I mentioned before, and we started ideating with Solana Foundation on alternative ways to solve, basically the runtime diversity problem. They started working on Fire Dancer back then in 23. It wasn't available to ship until last year and this year. But as Anza took away what we call like decoupled, which Joanna will probably talk about as well, decoupled the runtime and the client code base. Initially, we had everything kind of jumbled together, and now we have client and runtime. Anza and Fire Dancer took care of client diversity. Now they needed more teams to experiment on top of the OSs, which is the SVM. As SVM actually matured, we realized it can be configured, but keeping the core traits, which is parallel processing. AVM is catching up there as well. Local fee markets, your separation of logic and state and logic, such and so forth. And we decided to build our own SVM in order to scale initially gaming, and then later, just a bunch of social media use cases. But yeah, that's a little bit about why we got into SVMs.
Yeah, Jason, how you get started with SVM?
Okay, so I'll say how I got started with SVM first, and I'll say how I got started with Solayer. So how I got started with all the different whatever languages out there, Move, SVM, Ton, they have a different language, is because I operate MPC vaults, and we integrate with most of the blockchains out there in the market. So and we cover a lot of teams, right? So we have teams on almost every chain using us, and foundations to some extent. So we have to integrate. We have to write contracts for batch send. We have to deploy, some things into almost every chain. So we got the user experience, and then SVM is one of the harder to develop, but easier for users to use type of chain design, right? And there are a couple of reasons. Just want to break it down for you. First, if you look at, let's just look at parallelism, right? It's much harder for Ethereum to parallelize transactions because there's no upfront declared state access. So you don't know what the transaction is going to access, and therefore it cannot run two transactions concurrently because they might access the same state, and that leads to a thing called state contention. So if two things are trying to grab the same spot, they have to go in sequence, right? And most of the EVM transactions, because of how they designed, very much so because of how it's designed, not because they have to do that, are conflicting. So they have conflicting access patterns. So even if you take the same type of actions, you play it, you do it on Solana, they might not be conflicting. But on Ethereum, if you do the same type of transactions, they will be conflicting just because of the design. And the second thing is the upfront state, access declared in a transaction allows the scheduler to parallelize things without much penalty. So that's the second point. And the third thing is better UX in general. For example, there's a lot of wasted transactions in EVM. If you want to do a cross-chain, if you want to do a swap, you have to approve and then swap. If you want to do a cross-chain swap, you have to approve, wait, bridge, wait, approve again on the destination chain, and then you wait, and then you swap, right? Just think about the onboarding experience. Horrible. And you have to go to two different websites to do that, because you have to land first on the bridge website. You have to somehow get ETH, and then go to that bridge website. And after everything is done, you go to another website. Along the way, you have to switch your wallet a couple of times. That's the experience, right? From SVM, you don't have any of that. So that's also the reason why I'm a close, I support SVM in general. How I got started with Solayer was like more or less an accident. So not really planned in any way. So I was like helping out a friend, and that ended up being a co-founder, and that's it.
Yeah, my experience, I guess, it's a bit of a hot take given the fact that we're at East Denver, right? So I just got really frustrated by what's going on in ETH with the lack of user adoption. I started out as very much an ETH maxi. I started my crypto career in 2017 through the DeFi summer, and I was previously a currency trader for 10 plus years, and I really saw like this glimpse of hope, like DeFi is going to be the future. So took a huge pay cut to come into crypto, and spent majority of my career working with the ETH ecosystem. But as mentioned, I also worked at OP, so saw the proliferation of just these ETH L2s that are quite undifferentiated and starting to really cultivate this grand farmer culture where the developers will just hop around, pretty much like building nothing new, but simply collecting these grant checks. So I think this is really fundamentally the infra's fault, right? Because the infra is not building anything that's enabling the new innovation. And when I looked around at the time, when I was thinking about funding my own company about the same time last year, I thought about like, where do I see user adoption, right? And this is the holy grail that we all are here to solve. And even at the time, I think this was before the meme coin mania, but Solana was already that shining example of just more innovation, more new narratives are popping up. So. And I also kind of similar to what Jason mentioned, like thought about the reason why, right? SVM is flipping EVM, and majority of this is the user experience. As a ETH Maxi, once I moved over to like Jupiter and be able to use like DCA, value average, all of the features that you cannot find elsewhere in other dexes, it just became pretty clear that we need to enable that kind of builder culture and the level experience on all the ecosystem, because I guess ideally everyone will build on Solana, but that's just not the case. That's why we have ETH Denver, not Solana Denver, right? And we have all these people that got onboarded into the space, through like NFT phase that bought a bunch of JPEGs that are still on ETH that we still haven't figured out how to liquidate. We have all these assets sitting on the restaking protocols. So it's really about how do I bring like your favorite Solana apps to ETH so you can actually find these capital efficiency and better ways to interact with the users. And therefore, at the end, it's solving this user adoption issue.
Yeah, let's discuss a tough question here. I think you guys all talk about the performance. Right, latency, fees, and TPS. Can you guys share the numbers here, one by one?
Theoretical TPS for Solana, we're pretty much just sticking to whatever that is, right? 130,000 on average, and then if you look at non-voting transactions on average, it's around 4,000 to 8,000. Both of those numbers are actually increasing. Block time is decreasing over the last 2 years. Success rate also increases. So our thoughts is actually different, I guess, from, for example, like Jason's. We are just sticking with whatever the OS already supports, and then we focus on configurability and use case, as opposed to scaling on top of Solana. And we also think Solana, with runtime diversity and client diversity, will scale itself. And that's the ethos that we really advise to. I think just adding on to that one point, Solana has the ethos of fixing itself as it goes. And a lot of consumer application builders have the same ethos. That's what we had at TikTok, for example. And because of that, we tend to just kind of ship and believe that it's going to get faster and faster and fix whatever issue comes up. Statewide quality of service was something that actually just was a problem for failed transactions. And then we were like, oh, how do we actually increase the non-spam bot transactions success rates? And then Solana proposed, hey, can we just increase stake weight quality of service, where the RPCs would actually prioritize, or it would prioritize the higher staked weight nodes. So yeah, that's how I think about it.
Yeah, so the TPS you want to say is 100K, right?
Well, theoretical TPS for these systems are very different from actual non-voting transactions. So we only look at non-voting transactions because consensus doesn't really matter there. On execution, it's a couple thousand to like 10K. Okay. But that's enough for as much of the traffic there is now.
Yeah, what about you, Jason?
So our target at launch is going to be 1 million TPS per second. That's 100 gigabits, at least in network throughput we have to push. So we're building out our specialized equipment and data centers and et cetera in Fremont, California. We have an instance running at 500,000 TPS right now. It's at explorer.solayer.org. The URL is over there if you want to try it, give it a try. We're saturating it from our own end at 250,000 so that we're leaving out capacity for other people to also try the endpoint. Latency-wise, because we're using a mega leader structure, block time actually doesn't matter. So as long as the shred is pushed out, your transaction is seen as confirmed. there will be no rollbacks, like period. For finalization, if you want to trust transaction, if you want to trust pre-confirmations from the mega leader, it's still an L1 network, but we still have pre-confirmation. It's a hybrid model. You can just see, the moment you submit the transaction, and then the sequence, the sort of a mega leader gives the results to you as the final liest point, which is almost instant. There's no latency. Block time does not matter in our case. There is a concept of block, but block time does not matter in our case. It could be 2 seconds, but a transaction still confirm gets, as long as the shred gets pushed out. Then the second thing is, if you want to wait for network confirmation, that's going to take longer because people are going to vote. It's still a L1 trust assumption design. People have to vote on the transaction state and whatever. So that will take some time for them to catch up, like, couple of seconds, 2 to 3 seconds. And the same thing goes for all the layer 1 networks because of decentralized voting.
Yeah, so first of all, we don't have the fortune of launching a token before mainnet. So we actually launched our mainnet first. So our benchmark numbers are all real, right? So we have a 30K TPS and 50 milliseconds block time that's currently running on our mainnet. It's been around for 2 months. So in terms of how we accomplished that, right? So we used what we call the decouple SVM to basically we did 3 innovations. One is the basically adding this SVM mini engine on top of Ethereum. Just to clarify, we're ETH L2, right? We're not a Solana L2 like some of the panelists here. So what we're really benchmarking is like what ETH L2s today in existing mainnet can do, right? It's basically like 2K, 3K. So we are already blowing those guys out of the water. So yeah, so we basically first focus on decoupling the execution threads from the voting threads, right? Because on the Solana mainnet, about 30% to 50% of the overall transactions are consensus layer, right? So as an L2, we don't need that. We strip that out, and then we add Merkleization to put it on top of ETH with a deprivation pipeline, with a backend have a fraud proof. So it's not a multi-sig that can be easily rugged. And the third innovation we did is we actually introduced a concept called horizontal scaling. So quite different from what the Solana vertical scaling can do. We are further modularizing the TPU, the transaction processing unit among multiple machines, so it can spread the workload amongst various machines that has more reliability and still at the same time increase the TPS. That's a research that we've been doing with Anza. We mentioned the dev shop that got spun out from Solana Foundation. So yeah, with those, as long with the dynamic block time production, which basically just means that we can dynamically decrease the block production based on the number of transactions that's happening on the L2. And yeah, essentially we can further decrease the block time as we scale the overall transaction activity on the L2.
Yeah, I think performance matters a lot for the infrastructure, but it's not the only matter. Like Chris mentioned, the usability, composability, configurability also matters a lot. I think we have 1.5 minutes left. Any question from the audience? Anyone want to ask about use case, performance, Solana ecosystem future, Solana token price?
Okay, I have a question. So since we have like sort of like from 10 to 1 million, 10,000 to 1 million like TPS, right? So what are the ideal use cases for your stacks right now, or probably for the next few years?
I can go. Well, I think each chain ultimately would need the DeFi modules. It's just like you can't really avoid it. You need liquidity on chain. Once you have a basic layer of liquidity, you don't need a lot of TVL. Once you have a basic layer, the faster the chain, the faster the interchain experience. So for example, from Solana to our rollup, the bridge is super fast, right? And then you can actually do a lot of interesting design where there's cross-chain MEV, there's the TikTok throughput that we can support. But just these 2 points, plus really a basic layer of liquidity, would spawn out a lot of legacy social media projects launching assets on top of them, and then just get distribution and liquidity across the board. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, sounds good. TikTok, yeah.
I think, so the question is, what use cases do I see with a faster infrastructure, right?
Yeah, to fill in your 1 million TPS.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good answer.
No, I'm
Like
serious. The reason for that is because I know with like there's Moore's law for scaling,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Why do you need a faster transistor? If you asked the question 40 years ago, right? But you don't. So we're like NVIDIA, we work on the hardware acceleration piece of it, and we work on the fundamental compute layer. And we're just trying to make the fundamental layer faster. That's our one and only mission. As to what people are going to build on top of that, I actually don't know. I know that there are projects that are going to overflow from Solana onto a Solayer Infinity SVM upon launch. They're trading related. So the second you type in whatever, it gets confirmed. They want that user experience. So I know some of that, but I don't know if they will be the predominant use cases. Maybe there's a day when all the Visa transactions, I mean, we'll process some of the Visa card transactions from Solayer on Infinity SVM as well. Maybe that will feel predominant share of the chain volume. So the honest answer is that I don't know.
Okay, I will make the tweet for the FAD. Hi, Joanna.
Yeah, I think the main thing that we need to understand is, we're really like leaping into this agentic future, right? So like AI is, I know, a buzzword that everyone hate to hear again on this panel, but I am very bullish about AI being the #1 user of blockchain and potentially can take up like 30% of the total blockchain transactions at the end of the year. That's my personal prediction. So when you talk about like we build this entire infrastructure that is decentralized and can enable autonomous AI agents and that can trade on behalf of you 24/7, right? Are we really ready for that infrastructure future, right? Are we actually building the right infrastructure to allow that to happen? I think the answer is not so much, right? Like we had the human usage in mind when we build these infrastructures in the first place. So be able to process something like 10 million TPS, it's like, yeah, fucking cool. Now you can actually make agents like talk to each other and do all this weird shit that's like not just DeFi related. You can have an AI girlfriend who you talk to, I mean, hopefully not 24/7, right? That can be recorded on chain now. So I am super bullish on that future where we are actually purposely building this infrastructure that can allow, finally, I feel like this is a kind of a reminiscent of the internet, right? When it first got introduced to the world in the 70s, like it didn't really take off until 10 years later when everyone started to realize it's not human to human interaction, it's actually computer to computer interaction. Yeah. That's what's so good about internet, right? So now the blockchain is finally get to the stage, is ready for the agent to be talking to agents. And that's going to take over the majority of the usage of the blockchain. That's why I'm so bullish about SVM. I see.
So agents are the future. Yeah, thanks all the amazing panelists from Joanna and Jason and also Chris and Yiping. Let's give another round of applause.